Hi there. I'm here today to talk about the Leica T. This is not a brand new camera, but it's new to me, and I thought it was a very interesting comparison with some of my other cameras. So I'm going to briefly go over the Leica T. The Leica T is an all one-piece aluminum body, very nicely constructed, and of course it comes with the legendary Leica glass, the Leica Lenses. This one is their kit lens, and it's a pretty nice lens. Comes with a nice little flash. I've added the accessory viewfinder, and this one is operated primarily through the use of a touchscreen. Now, I'm not much of a fan of touchscreens, but as touchscreens go, this one's a pretty good one. You go through a menu system here, and it gives you most of your options. Now, the only manual controls, if you select manual mode, are basically your aperture and your shutter speed right here with these two dials. That's about the only dials that you have on the camera. It's a very simplistic design. If you're buying a Leica, I'm going to have to presume that you're buying it for the Leica lenses, because what really makes a Leica special is the lenses. So we're going to talk a little bit about lenses too. Now, one of the things that I have found with the Leica, I shoot with a lot of different cameras, and when I post-process, I found that the Leica photographs processed differently than anything I've ever used before. And it was a little bit disconcerting when I tried to color correct and color balance. I had a little bit of difficulty. During this video, I'm going to be displaying several photographs taken by each of the cameras to try and show you the differences and the similarities between them. Although you have to realize that the limitation of the definition of the TV is really going to minimize any apparent differences. So some of this you'll kind of have to take my word for it or try them yourself. I was, for the most part, very happy with the Leica performance when I was not shooting a monochromatic subject. The sky versus the sky and the sand, for example. When I shot an animal, and you'll see here, the animal's outstandingly crisp. There's a lot of metrics to evaluate a lens. Some of the metrics are very subjective, but some of them aren't. For example, the Leica does a very good job of separating your subject that's in focus from the background, and the background has a very creamy texture. It's very nice. This is not unique to Leica, but Leica does it as well or better than anybody. My point is here that the Leica lenses are the focus of why you buy a Leica camera. Now, this is not an inexpensive camera. This is an APS-c format camera. The body only on this camera is $1,850. This 18 to 56 lens is $1,750. The viewfinder is $523. That makes this little package, as is, without the little gray case here, about $4,125. That's a pretty good chunk of change. If you want any more lenses, the other Leica lenses are similarly expensive. Now, these are APS-c format lenses. They will also fit on the SL Leica camera, which sells for about $6,500. I'm going to be close, I may not be exact. I've seen them from $6,500 to $7,000 so far, so I don't know what they're going to be when they are abundant. And this lens will fit on that camera. However, when you put an APS-c lens on a full-frame camera, it is not just the 1.5 crop factor that you lose. The area of the sensor that the APS-c format lens uses is only about 46 to 50% of the sensor. So if you have a 24 megapixel sensor, when you put on an APS-c lens with a 1.5 crop factor, the amount of the sensor you're going to be using is only about half, so 11 to 12 megapixels. So Yes, you could use these lenses on a full frame body. You're going to lose a lot of your sensor if you do. You're probably going to be getting a pretty good image nonetheless because of the quality of that full frame sensor. Now, that's not the same as when you put a full frame lens on a APS-c sensor, where you retain, of course, the entire sensor and you're using the best part of the lens. So it's much better to use a full frame lens on an APS-c camera than vice versa. We've talked a little bit about this camera. This camera, in my opinion, is best suited to someone who normally shoots in aperture priority or shutter priority rather than a full manual camera. This camera makes ISO relatively inaccessible. You have to get your eye away from the viewfinder or the LCD if you're using it that way before you can change the ISO. I find an ISO dial very convenient. Not all these cameras have it, but most of them make it more convenient than this Leica does. Now, the Leica does an excellent job with metering, so using it in shutter or aperture priority mode is very good. I used it in manual mode, and it worked okay as long as I didn't have to access ISO. I was pretty happy with it. It got me some pretty good images, and like I say, let me put a few of those up there for you right now. The Leica body and lens costs about $4,125 with the viewfinder. What could I get for about the same amount of money that would be competitive? Let's take the Sony A7R Mark II. The A7 body is about $31.95 right now, and this is the kit lens, and when you buy it in a package, you buy the camera and lens, and it normally adds about $300 to the cost of the kit. It's a very inexpensive lens. I would imagine if you had to buy it by itself, it's going to be probably in the $700 or $800 range, but let's just say this is going to be about a $3,400, $3,500 camera with the lens. Maybe a little bit more if you buy them separately. But if you bought it separately, I doubt very much this is the lens you would choose to buy separately, and which is why most of the A7Rs Mark IIs are not listed with a kit lens. They are leaving it up to you to purchase a separate lens. And I would candidly surmise that they were trying to get you to buy the 24-70 Zeiss lens because of the much higher quality. And then you would be getting much closer to the $41.25 price of the Leica. However, with the A7R Mark II, you also get in-body image stabilization and a full-frame sensor. In addition, you get exposure compensation dials, mode dials. You get a lot more buttons and conveniently accessible items on the back so that you can change parameters to your liking, do a magnification of the focus area. Any number of things are customizable with this camera. Now we're talking about a body which is, in my opinion, far superior to the Leica body. The Sony has numerous options for lenses. In addition to the Sony lenses and the Zeiss lenses, which are made for the Sony, you can use through an adapter many legacy lenses, vintage lenses, and you can use current lenses such as Canon and Nikon. Now this is the A7 Mark II. This is not the R, this is the A7 Mark II. The A7R has a 42 megapixel sensor and it's backside illuminated. The A7 Mark II has a 24.3 megapixel sensor and is not BSI, backside illuminated. This camera sells for $16.98 or $19.98 with the kit lens, the 28-70 lens. So with that package, it comes out at $1,998. Now, in all fairness, you aren't going to use the kit lens to compare with the Leica, so you need to factor in a Zeiss lens to be able to get in the same ballpark. But you can get into the system full frame, a lot more features, a lot more dials, exposure compensation, display changes, ISO changes, all the rest of the dials through the backside of buttons that you can access and you can custom configure. This one total with a lens would be $1,998. If you throw in the fancier, more expensive 24-70 Zeiss lens, you're still talking about the $2,800 to $3,000 range for the Zeiss zoom lens that would compare with the Leica zoom lens. So let's go a little bit further here. The complaint I have about the Leica T is the non-traditional Leica T type series of manual operation. And the camera that actually has made its name on copying the Leica type of style is the Fujifilm. Fujifilm has dials up on top for the shutter speed, exposure compensation, and even the aperture is set on an aperture ring, unlike any of the rest of the cameras here. This aperture ring on the camera is kind of handy for those of us who are used to that. It's also a very convenient feature, just in general. But it's one of those things, preferences. It is the older style, and it does work that way, and I happen to like it. It's very old style, though, very Leica-like. Let's talk about the Fujifilm lenses, because the Fujifilm lenses are really what makes this system what it is. It's an excellent system. The lenses are sort of expensive compared to Nikon and Canon. I think they're going to be slightly more expensive. However, the quality of Fujifilm routinely is in the category of Zeiss and Leica. Does that mean it's just as good as a Leica or Zeiss? Now that depends on you, because Leica and specifically Leica and almost as much Zeiss have a specific character to the way they capture the images. They have a special bokeh. They have a special separation. They do things very well. And even different Zeiss and Leica lenses of the same focal length are catered to do different things differently. Different lenses do different things better or worse, depending upon their design intent. The Fujifilm makes a very professionally oriented lens. They don't have the variety of lenses of Zeiss or Leica, but the Fujifilm lenses are truly excellent, and they're all professional caliber lenses. Now the Fujifilm, this is an X-T10, which is their new consumer, prosumer level body. The X-T10 has most of the features of the X-T1 with a slightly smaller body and a smaller price tag. So it has some advantages. This one comes in at $799. I think the X-T1 at this point is $1099, and the 18 to 55 millimeter lens, if you don't buy it on the camera, is $699. If you buy it on the camera, it's going to be cheaper. So we have a $1,200 to $1,500 camera here that has a very excellent viewfinder and a 16.3 megapixel sensor, which is the same size sensor as the Leica T. The image that you're getting, the amount of sensor size and everything, is going to match very closely to the Leica T. This camera matches in a lot of aspects very closely to the Leica T. However, like I say, it has a lot more controls, and this is more designed to a more professional-oriented camera buyer. I think that's a good option also for a lot less money, a little more than a third the price of the Leica camera body system. And finally, we have the Lumix Gx8. Now, why would I throw the Gx8 in here? Well, the reason I picked Panasonic cameras in the first place is because they used Leica lenses. Well, let me back up just a little bit. I'm an old Leica fan from way back, and when I bought some of my smaller cameras, the pocketable ones, I looked at Leica cameras that were pocketable, and I found out that they were actually rebranded Panasonic Lumix cameras, and the Panasonic Lumix cameras even had a Leica branded lens. Now, what does a Leica branded lens mean? That means that Leica and Panasonic got together, and Panasonic laid out the preliminary designs, and Leica went through the designs and changed and altered them as they deemed fit to be qualified to use the Leica brand name, and it meant that Leica actually followed the production process to ensure that the quality level of that lens was maintained to their standards. So Leica is pretty vested in the Leica branded lenses. You aren't going to get a Leica branded lens that's inferior. So Panasonic and Lumix have teamed up, and you see that Lumix makes some Lumix lenses, and they also have some Leica branded lenses available. As a matter of fact, I think Leica has even coached Panasonic on some of their lenses that aren't quite up to the Leica standards and do not carry the Leica branding. because some of the Panasonic Lumix lenses are actually pretty good, very good for the size of and the expense of the lens. Panasonic has the advantage of the volume that they sell, being able to cut costs. And that's also a huge advantage to Leica, because Lumix pays them for the use of the Leica brand, and it bolsters their bottom line so they can continue to develop at a very high level. There are some true Leica lenses available for this Micro Four Thirds camera. This particular camera, the Gx8, is 20 megapixels. This one sells right now for around $1,000. I imagine it will go down as times change. Panasonic seems to roll through models much more quickly than most manufacturers, probably due to the large size of the company. They bring out new models to spur sales. So they do a lot of new camera introductions. That said, this one's a very good camera. This one has in-body image stabilization, which is a shared feature with the Sony's A7 Mark II series. None of the rest of the cameras here have in-body image stabilization, and even with the introduction of the new Sony A6300, they did not put image stabilization into the body as we thought they might. Image stabilization is used on many of the Fujifilm lenses and on many of the Sony APS-c lenses that are for the A6000. Almost all of the Sony lenses are image stabilized in the lens, but it works in concert with the body, as do with the Gx8, not so on the Gx7. The old vintage lenses are not going to be image stabilized. You're going to find Zeiss lenses made for a number of different manufacturers. So then it becomes much more important to have the in-body image stabilization, so it will give you a little more latitude with your exposure. So there we have it, kind of a summary of these cameras. Would I buy the Leica T as a semi-professional user? For me, as much as I like having a Leica, this is not a model I would choose to own. I bought this one, I tried it, and I probably will not keep it. I would rather use the Sony A7 Mark IIs. I would rather use the Fujifilm if I want full control. APS-c, similar size sensor. I really want Fujifilm to come out with a in-body image stabilization. That would make this camera a lot more appealing to me. They have superb lenses, great lenses. It's very compact, they're easy to carry. I really enjoy this camera, but until they come out with image stabilization, I'm probably going to be carrying my A7R Mark II and A7 Mark II. I can go into a lot of darkened places that won't allow tripods and hand hold this with a very slow shutter speed and still capture the shot with a lot of definition, a lot of range. So that is my camera of choice in that price range. As much as I like the Leica T, I like the idea of a less expensive version. This doesn't meet my needs. This is a nice camera. It's very nicely built. For those of you who are intro into cameras and want something very nice, I certainly won't badmouth this one because it is built beautifully. Its construction quality is superb. The one-piece aluminum body is just gorgeous. The lenses are tack sharp, very nice, very good color, very good separation. It does a great job for what it is. And I will leave it at that. I think you will enjoy it if that's what you want. It is not a bad choice, don't get me wrong. I do like the Leica T, but it isn't the Leica that I would buy if I were able to buy anything I wanted. Cost, unfortunately, for most of us is an issue, and the cost for the model Leica I would want is cost prohibitive. So if you can afford it, go for it. This is a nice entry into the Leica system, but since it won't upgrade well with the Leica lens to the full frame, I would be reluctant to go with this particular lens. I would go with a full frame lens. Go ahead and spend the money so that if you decide to upgrade, it will work well, as opposed to this lens where you would lose half the sensor size. So that would be my take on the Leica T.